News.
All right, so we're talking about withdrawing, guns and the security officers of the VIPs in the country. And now let's to have this discussion with us in studio. I'll start with the guest who's seated on my immediate left. That is Brian Adera. It's Byron. Byron Adera, who is the spokesperson of at the Association of Corporate and Industrial Security Management Professionals. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
And seated next to Mr. Adera is none other than Enoch Amulasi Makanga. Alumasi Makanga. Sorry for that. Yeah. And you're not a new face here on KTN News Center. Happy New Year and welcome. Good morning.
Happy New Year.
He's a security analyst and expert, and also joining us via way of phone. We are also, privileged to talk to the chairperson of the National Gun Association, Owners Association, Anthony Wahome, who will be joining us via way of phone. And Mr. Wahome, good morning, and thank you also for joining us here on KTN News Center. But now, let's begin with you, Mr. Adera. The decision to withdraw guns and the security office, the security officers of the VIPs in the country.
Yes.
Was that decision really necessary?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we all know that to him that is much is given, much is expected. If you cast your eyes across the battlements that the security and safety is in this country, then you see a level of impunity that had to be addressed in a certain way. And I think we should welcome the move by the IG to really jump in and take a deep dive into this situation that the security and safety of this country is, to resort to drastic measures like he did take to redress those imbalances. I mean, it goes without saying that the country has been treated to a lot of fiasco, let alone just what has been witnessed in the recent past. But a lot that has contributed to the proliferation of small arms with regards to the carelessness with which this very high reliability business, which is the profession of arms, be it in the public, security machinery's hands, which is the police and all the other arms, and or in the hands of the privately armed, or licensed holders. I welcome that move.
You welcome that move.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Makanga, I mean, why didn't the government just decide, let's withdraw your guns and still leave you with security officers? Because as much as they're facing, crimes in along the corridors of justice, they're still very important people in the society.
First of all, I want to congratulate the Inspector General of Police for making such a decision. I think it was long overdue. We want to see more of these decisions being made that actually touch on the national security of this country. MPs, or let me say VIPs for that matter, have taken this privilege, and they've taken it to a level that I think we've been seeing a lot of cinemas, and this must end. This must end. It's not in the best interest of national security for an MP to be involved in crime, and then you are hiding in the name of Mheshimiwa. I think that one should end, and I think the IG has done a very good job. The only problem is that something must be done at the Parliamentary Service Commission level, where these MPs must be taken through what you call the basic firearm handling techniques. So that once you get to Parliament, you are taken to either the civilian range, or you are taken to Embakasi, and you are taken through the basic firearm handling techniques, because that's where the problem is. These guys are having guns, and in fact, it is more dangerous for them to have guns, and they have no idea of how these guns are supposed to be used.
But then it begs the question, because I mean, even the Constitution puts it very clear, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Security we are talking about is not, a gun is not a djembe, I can tell you that. A gun is something that if you have it, you risk your life, as well as you risk the life of other people.
All right.
Because if somebody who is well armed, well trained, gets hold of that gun, I can tell you, you are dead. Your bodyguards are dead.
All right. Then it begs the question, because apparently some of this, some of these leaders, some of these elected political leaders, were not even informed personally. Some are saying that it's the bodyguards, security officers, who called them to inform them, by the way, I will no longer give you security services.
Okay, we can debate the mechanics and the procedures that are put in place to ensure that this was done. But the main concern for me is the worry that should be on our shoulders, the normal citizenry that the Kenyan people are. If we have the Waheshimiwas, you know, as said, with the VVIPs or the VIPs conducting themselves in a manner that does not warrant those positions or that name either. The business of holding arms and having arms to operate with is very high liability. The decision flies at 800 meters or in excess of 800 meters per second. That cannot be trusted with someone who's not proficient in the use of the same, or someone whose temperament is not correct and whose decisions may not be very, very alive to the situations that surround his person. We are treated to a lot of as I said, impunity with the way the Waheshimiwas, the VIPs treat themselves. I mean, if you are granted bodyguards, for that matter, VIP protection, then you should allow them, more like a doctor-patient relationship, you should allow them to conduct their professional duties as much as they can, because your life is in their hands. We've witnessed where VIPs have had to behave in a manner that suggests that either the protection team that's around them are not professionally conducting themselves to attune themselves to the correct procedures and policies to be followed when they're doing their jobs. Because ideally, before a VIP responds to either an imminent threat to his own life, it should follow that either his protection team have been neutralized or they're not doing their job. All right.
So let me bring in the chairperson of the National Gun Owners Association, Mr. Anthony Wahome, joining us via way of phone. Mr. Wahome, good morning. Talking about... Thank you for joining us. I mean, there are at least 8,100 registered gun owners in this country. And the saddest thing, and it's something that even the government has been talking about, there are other gun holders who've not registered their firearms with the government. But the question here is, the decision by the government to withdraw guns from the VIPs and also the security officers, is it really necessary? Because these are people who are elected by members of the public to represent them.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. Let me just start by saying there was a vetting exercise that was conducted by the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government through the Firearms Licensing Board from April last year. And basically all licensed firearm owners went through the vetting. So to a large extent, all these people have been vetted. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you, Mr. Wahome.
And I don't think at this point we can say that there are people out there with firearms that are not registered with government. The vetting exercise was so elaborate to the point where all licensed firearm owners had to take their firearms to DCI for them to obtain forensic DNA, forensic fingerprints of every firearm. And that was a very important exercise in the sense that if any of these firearms was to be used to conduct any crime anywhere, then the people at the forensic ballistics laboratory would be able to tell that so-and-so's firearm was used to commit this crime. Having said that, I think our law, our members, our VIPs, so to speak, and I think we are referring to members of the National Assembly. These are the lawmakers. And in as much as the National Police Service is charged with the duty of maintaining law and order, it beats the purpose for the National Police Service to afford protection to any member of the August House or any other VIP who would be breaking the law. It beats the purpose. We are paying police officers through taxes to enforce the law, to maintain law and order. They cannot then be the ones who are protecting people who are breaking the law. And I think what the IG Mutyambai did was very commendable, and it's about sending the right signal. To tell everyone, all and sundry, that you cannot break the law and get protection in it.
Mr. Wahome, is there a need of training the VIPs in terms of when to defend yourself with your firearm and how to do it without injuring, somebody? When you're in a public place, actually.
There is a need. And Brenda, for the longest time, The licensing authority licenses civilians to hold firearms, but they do not conduct any training. And that's where the National Gun Owners Association felt there was a need, because there was that gap. A person is licensed to hold a firearm, but the government will not train you. And that's why the association came into being. We primarily engage ourselves with training, proficiency training for our members, and also to train them on what the law states as far as justifiable use of a firearm goes. So that if these VIPs are licensed, so to speak, it does not make them above the law. Every civilian licensed firearm owner is governed by the same law. And the Firearms Act, governs this. So that whether you're a VIP, whether you are just, any other civilian without any portfolio in public, portfolio, you are governed by the same law. So the onus is on them to ensure that they are trained. They say ignorance of the law is no defense. So the onus is on them to ensure that they are trained. And as an association, we have members of the National Assembly, governors, cabinet secretaries, PSAs, who are our members. And they have engaged themselves, they have trained themselves to be proficient in the use of their firearms and what the Firearms Act provides for as far as the justifiable use of their firearms goes. All
right. So, Mr. Home, let me just get the sentiments of Mr. Makanga, who's a security expert and an analyst in matter security. And Mr. Makanga, you've heard what Mr. Home has said.
Yes.
There is need to train everyone who has a firearm, whether you're an elected member of parliament, a governor, senator, as long as you have a firearm, you've registered with the government. There is need to train. And that is that's the same thing that Mr. Adero is also saying.
Yes. There's a problem, and let's say the truth. The truth is MPs or VIPs access, they normally get these guns, and they have no basic training on gun handling. And that's why the Gun Owners Association came in place, and they've done a very good job in terms of just trying to train people to be able to understand how to use a gun. And the problem we have right now is that most of our VIPs, they only get a gun, and he's just putting it on his waist, and he has no idea. In fact, if he's attacked, you find this guy his life is in danger. He cannot be able to know what he's supposed to do. Basically, what Mr. Ome is saying is that there's need for Parliamentary Service Commission, the way they normally do their own induction on MPs. When they come on board, they have no idea on how legislation is done. They have to go to Mombasa, they have to go to Naivasha, being taken through all the procedures of the Parliament. Why can they create a session, 1 day session, 2 day session, 4 day session, where they can be able to engage the Gun Owners Association? They have a very good range in Kiambu, where they can be taken through these issues. Then from there, we now come to the issue of the one Byron I talked about, the bodyguards. I can tell you, bodyguards are only taken from the police, and then they are told, can you be the protection person for this particular Mheshimiwa? Now, the problem with that is that I was a police officer. Yes, I'm the vice president for International Police Association. I know very well that police officers are not trained, not all of them are trained on VIP protection. When you join any VIP protection, you will be taken through a special training, a trek, and you are taken through protocols in a VIP protection. So when you take somebody from the police station or from anywhere, then you tell him you are the one to protect so-and-so. The problem is when there's a problem, the guy will pull out the gun and you're able to just shoot in the air. And these are the problems that we are seeing in terms of what is happening in Parliament, where our MPs sometimes when they can even shoot themselves in the foot. He thinks having a gun makes him more secure. But I can tell you when there's a problem, that gun will be taken from that MP very easily without any protocoling. The only risk is that if it is taken by a well-trained, maybe ex-police or ex-military, I can tell you we're going to have a disaster.
So is there a need actually, Mr. Adera, because what Mr. Home and what Mr. Makanga are saying are very important and pertinent sentiments that needs to be considered by the government to an issue when licensing people to have, private guns. And so when the government actually gives out, I'm to have my own gun, does the government actually go to the extent of asking, why do you need a gun as a VIP, and why do you think you call yourself a VIP in the country? Because, anyone can be a VIP in this country.
Exactly.
I'd like to walk down the memory lanes as to how this actually happens. And I'd want to peg honorably the word VIP on every Kenyan out there. The reason being every citizen deserves fair treatment before you are under the law, and everybody deserves utmost security and safety. So the word VIP has been fairly abused. If you walk down the procedures and policies that are taken into consideration to arm a Kenyan that is about 21 years of age, they appear before the Firearms Licensing Board, they're given a form to fill up, they get a certificate of good conduct from the DCI, and they push those forms into the sub-county intelligence committee that does the positive vetting. We know those processes sometimes, and way back, the reason why the board was actually disbanded by Minister Matiang'i is that this was fairly abused. So any Kenyan would walk into the offices and grab a form, perhaps just pay a couple of thousands of shillings, and they get license, and they buy a gun, and they have guns in their hands. So training and the policies and procedures surrounding the whole bit were a hogwash, to say the least. Now, it's got to be driven by a need analysis, which has got to come from a proper threat analysis on any person. If it so deserves, and you need to have a better protection on your person because you've been pegged as high risk or you're VVIP for that matter, then you can. If you think on your person you are challenged by heightened insecurities or risks to your life because of the threat metrics around you because of one or two things, not necessarily because you are a rich member of the society or something like that, then you could get a license. So what has happened in the past is that this has been fairly abused, and that's why you see a lot of things that have been done in a very haphazard way. So in a sense, we have created a lot of insecurities in this space because of guns being in the hands of people not proficient. Under Article 3 of the CAP 114 that actually talks about the firearms licensing, subpara 5, 1 and 2, or A and B, actually talks about the proficiency that has got to be enforced by the Firearms Licensing Board. This, going by the knowledge that I have, the board had not done fairly well this part since 2016, and Mr. Wahome can tell you quite a bit of that as well. And then it so follows in para 2 that they can terminate and vary and obviously do issue their licenses as they so wish. Now, if these are not done correctly, then we may end up, with the strategies that turn on their heads in terms of the security and safety of this country. All right.
So, Mr. Wahome, I believe you can still hear me. Now that we have the VIP having guns, and at the same time, some of them have bodyguards, is there a need just to ensure that it's just the bodyguards of the VIP who have guns and not the VIP themselves?
Well, I wouldn't want to be the one to determine whether the VIP should or should not have a gun. I think every case should be determined on a need basis. And really, when a VIP applies for a firearm, I believe they have very good reasons to own the firearm. In as much as this VIP will not always be afforded VIP protection, I think if the Firearms Licensing Board so deems fit to give this person a firearm, they might as well go ahead and give them. And I think the Cabinet Secretary has been talking about withdrawing all these VIP protection from all these VIPs. I think we have approximately 12,000 police officers who are involved either in VIP protection or cash in transit. And the Cabinet Secretary talked about withdrawing all of them by June. So in as much as that is going to happen, I think the VIPs need to know how to protect themselves in as much as they feel that they have a threat on themselves. But having said that, the problem we have as a country is that the few, and I say the few because only 18,000, there are only 18,000 licensed firearm owners, which amounts to 0.038% of the population. The few who are licensed, not a good number are not proficient. So that, and a good number do not know what the law provides for as far as justifiable use of their firearm is concerned. So, we have a situation where people, a license to a firearm is not a license to kill. It's not a license to use it at will. You cannot use it for bar brawls, for road rage, for domestic disputes. You can't. there are justifiable instances to use a firearm. And one, the danger must be imminent, period. If the danger is not imminent, use of the weapon is not permissible by law. And in as much as we have people who do not understand that simple bit, then there will be a lot of misuse of firearms. But I must say as well, I think the Firearms Licensing Board has been very deliberate about handling these cases. And we've seen a reduction, if I must say so. We've seen a reduction in the cases of misuse in the last 4 to 5 years.
So, Mr. Home, allow me to cut you short. You know, okay. In the explanation, you bring a very pertinent, issue which you've talked about. It's a matter of training private gun holders. Then which begs the question, the same question I asked Mr. Makanga and Mr. Dere in our studio. Is there a need to thoroughly vet this VVIP and VIP who apply, to have guns? Because then it means not all of them who apply for gun ownership actually deserve to have it.
Actually, the VIPs and the VVIPs underwent the vetting process. Every person who is licensed, irrespective of their status in society, actually underwent the vetting process. But the one thing that I think the Firearms Licensing Board can do better here is to ensure that the proficiency test, and you see, as Adera has mentioned, the proficiency checks are enforced, because the Firearms Act, as he mentioned, Article 3, talks about the Firearms Licensing Board ensuring proficiency. So that mandate is given to the Firearms Licensing Board. They are supposed to ensure that everyone who holds a firearm legally licensed in Kenya is proficient. So in as much as it is in the Act, they need to enforce it. And it needs to be enforced to such an extent that it actually talks about periodic assessment. So perhaps annually, all these people, before you're issued with a license, you need to do a proficiency test. And if you pass, then it is renewed. When you have a new license, you do the proficiency test. And when you pass, that's when you're issued with a new license.
Right.
Because...
all right. No, just wind up, please.
Yeah, because in the absence of that, then, I'll just give the same analogy I give. For you to get a driver's license, you have to go to a driving school, you have to do a test, you have to pass the test, then get the driver's license. Now, for you to get to drive a PSV vehicle, you have to go to another school for another month to do tests. Once you pass the test, you get a PSV license. That's for a driver's license. Now, how much more for a firearm certificate? People apply, they get the firearm certificate, and they're given a license. They go to a firearm dealer, they buy their weapon. But it has not been enforced yet that these people need to be proficient. They need to understand what the law provides for. As an association, we have endeavored to train our members in proficiency and in provisions of the law. We carry out seminars periodically. To train, and seminars which are conducted in conjunction with the DPP, the Directorate of Public Prosecution, because those are the people who will prosecute you when you misuse your firearm. So we bring them in, they engage our members so that they know what would constitute a misuse of a firearm, not so that they can avoid that. And our members are enlightened, so you won't. I must say we are proud in saying that since our inception in 2013, none of our members has ever been involved in misuse of a firearm.
All right.
Basically because of that.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Ohome. Talking to us via way of phone is the chairperson of the National